She said it like I wasn't even there. I mean, she's not my daughter, she's just his. It was said casually, over a wine glass, a joke tossed across the kitchen to one of her friends. I stood 3 steps away, setting down a plate of sliced oranges for their book club, hands still damp from rinsing. No one looked at me. No one flinched. The guest chuckled. An empty sound. I didn't speak. I didn't drop the plate. I didn't ask her to repeat herself. I just cataloged it. The kitchen smelled like tangerine peels and white wine. The overhead pendant lights flickered faintly. I placed the plate on the counter and walked out. No one noticed me leave. That's the thing about being treated like a shadow. You get good at moving through rooms without sound. My name is Selene Ward. I'm 31st Chief Operating Officer of Ward Consolidated Systems. I started there at 19. Mailroom. I own 54% of the company now. Quietly, legally, irrevocably. But back then, I was just his daughter. My mother died when I was 7. Ovarian cancer, sudden, violent. My father remarried 2 years later. Her name was Valerie. The first time I met her, she told me my room needed better light. She brought her daughter into the house 6 months after that. Melanie, same age as me, but she carried herself like she was already owed something. I was never asked how I felt about it. I was told to smile. She's your new sister, they said. Family means sharing. So I shared. My room, my father's attention, my silence. But she never shared anything back, not the compliments, not the heirlooms, not the good dishes. By the time I was 12, Valerie was signing the holiday cards as the Wards, David, Valerie, and Melanie. I wasn't mentioned. When I pointed it out, my father said it was an oversight. She smiled and said, "Oh, don't be sensitive." But they weren't careless. They were intentional. That's what people don't understand about erasure. It doesn't happen with a scream. It happens with polite corrections, with substitutions, with absence. She never said I didn't belong. She just built a life where I didn't need to be included, and I adapted. I kept my head down. I got good grades. I didn't break rules. I earned my place by being easy to ignore. The day I graduated college, my father gave me a check, $2,500, to get started. He gave Melanie a car the same month. No graduation, just because she'd been feeling down. Valerie told him I was the independent one, that I didn't like handouts. She made her disdain sound like admiration. It's a trick women like her perfect over time. So I didn't argue. I took the check. I paid off a small loan. I applied for a mailroom job at the company my grandfather had started, the one now chaired by my father, operated in practice by his second wife and her personal picks. I didn't get the corner office. I got the worst hours and a box cutter. But the badge still said Ward, and I knew exactly where that could go. That moment in the kitchen, all those years later, her saying I wasn't hers in my own childhood home, wasn't the beginning. It was the end of denial. Because I didn't feel hurt. I felt calm, focused, ready. A small crack had opened, and I was going to drive a freight truck through it. Dinners weren't meals. They were quiet tests. I learned to count the seconds between questions and silence. Valerie never asked me how my day was. She'd direct conversation like a conductor, steering forks and topics toward Melanie. "How was your math quiz, honey? What did Coach think of your tryout? Do you want to try that internship I told your mother about?" That last one always made my knuckles tighten. Your mother. The implication was never subtle. I was a guest, a long-term visitor, a barely tolerated relic of my father's first life. Melanie thrived in that attention. She floated in it. Perfect posture, lip-glossed smiles. And when I spoke, rarely, Valerie would tilt her head like she was waiting for me to finish so the real conversation could resume. She kept me around like an antique. technically valuable, emotionally inconvenient. At 18, I moved into a dorm with no boxes from her, no words of encouragement. My father shook my hand and handed me an envelope with a list of expectations. Don't embarrass the name. No social media nonsense. You're not owed anything. Melanie cried when she left for school. Valerie threw a brunch, gave her a pearl bracelet and a framed quote about grace. I got a handshake. Fine. I stopped asking for anything after that. By the time I applied to the family company, I knew how to make myself small. The receptionist thought I was applying for a delivery job. The HR clerk misspelled my last name on the badge, Ward with 2 R's. I didn't correct them. It wasn't the moment yet. They started me in the loading bay, 4:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., 6 days a week, mostly men, mostly turnover, but I stayed. I asked questions. I memorized inventory rotations, vendor lists, margins. When my supervisor broke his leg, I ran the bay for 3 weeks. When he returned, I was offered a junior logistics analyst role. That's when I started to dress differently. Neutral palettes, tailored slacks, sharp cuffs, a controlled aesthetic, no distractions, no softness. Valerie didn't know I worked there. Melanie still posted pool selfies with captions about finding your power. One day, I saw them both in the executive lobby. They didn't recognize me until I scanned my ID at the elevator. Valerie blinked. You work here? I smiled. Internship program, logistics, behind the scenes. She gave a practiced nod. I see, that's practical. Then turned back to Melanie and said, You could do marketing here. Imagine if you ran the brand Melanie beamed. I'd love that. They didn't ask what I did. They never did. It became a pattern. I'd rise a little higher, get moved to a new team, sit in a room a little closer to strategy. They never noticed. Valerie's world ran on visibility, titles, social capital, recognition. I existed in the margins. By 24, I had run 5 internal audits, streamlined the entire distribution model, and quietly saved the company nearly $4 million. No plaque, no email blast, just silence, until my father brought me up once in a board meeting. Celine's good with spreadsheets, he said. Valerie laughed. We love our little analyst. Our little analyst. I thanked her with a nod, neutral, emotionless. That night I stayed in the office until midnight, not out of spite, out of purpose. I opened the company archives, searched the charter, scanned the original bylaw filings. Every amendment, every exception. That's when I found Clause 9C. In the event of an equity dilution exceeding 35% due to non-board capital influx, majority voting rights shift to the highest individual shareholder regardless of familial relation. It was buried in a 2003 amendment. No one had touched it since, because no one expected the mailroom girl to build a capital syndicate under the radar. I made a list, then I made phone calls, and slowly, quietly, I started buying my father's legacy out from under the woman who said I wasn't hers. Valerie had a way of delivering cruelty with the cadence of concern. She never raised her voice, never used profanities. She used tone, sharp enough to cut, soft enough to sound maternal if overheard. She's just different, she'd say, shaking her head after a staff dinner. Never really adapted. Some girls are more grateful, she once told a distant cousin. Celine has always been independent to the point of isolation. She weaponized politeness. She draped condescension in pastel tones. I remember a specific day, Melanie's 16th birthday. My father bought her a car, silver, new, ribboned. I wasn't jealous. I'd already stopped expecting fairness. But when I congratulated her, she tilted her head and said, You'll get something too, I'm sure. A used Honda or Maybe just a hug. Valerie had been standing right behind her. She smiled and said, "Melanie, be kind. Celine doesn't need much. Need. Not deserve. Not earn. Just need." That was the word they used when they wanted to remind me I was ornamental. When I brought home a scholarship certificate in my senior year of high school, Valerie looked it over and said, "This is great, honey. It'll be good for the financial aid forms." She didn't frame it. She didn't post it. She just folded it neatly and set it on the kitchen table, like a receipt. Meanwhile, Melanie's every mediocre accomplishment was a milestone. A new phone, a dinner, a full-page collage in the holiday card. I once asked my father, quietly, cautiously, if he noticed. He exhaled like it exhausted him. "Celine? You know Valerie just has her own way of doing things." He said it slowly, like the words were heavier than usual. In hindsight, it was one of the first signs he was slipping. Numbers came slower. Decisions paused. His sharpness dulled quietly. Like everything else in that house, she did. Her way was hierarchy, and I was always at the bottom of it. Melanie got vacations, I got errands. Melanie got allowance, I got reminders not to waste electricity. Melanie got birthday brunches with 5 girlfriends. I got a text from my dad and a slice of grocery store cake. By the time I was 25, I had stopped sitting at the main table during holidays. It was easier to serve than disappear. No one commented on my absence, but I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was accumulating equity, influence, silence. It started with dormant shareholders, former managers, distant relatives, employees who'd taken early buyouts in exchange for small stakes. I tracked each one. I made them quiet offers through a partner firm. Nothing flashy, just enough to persuade them their shares weren't worth the headache. One by one, they accepted. By the time I was 28, I had 12%. By 29, I crossed 26%. I waited. I stayed quiet. Because once I hit 35%, Clause 9C would activate. That clause didn't care about marriage. It didn't care about blood. It didn't care that I wasn't the daughter who got Sunday spa days and brunch photos. It cared about numbers, and I was very, very good with numbers. That year, Melanie joined the marketing team. Valerie made a speech at the company holiday party. It's so exciting to have both my girls involved now. Both. My girls. I stood in the back, near the exit, glass in hand, pulse steady. The audience clapped. She turned, caught my eye, and smiled like she meant it. I smiled back. 2 months later, I secured the final 3%. My ownership hit 54%. I didn't announce it. I scheduled a board meeting instead. The division was called Legacy Integration. A euphemism, really. Code for the dying side of the business. Outdated systems, high overhead, no innovation. Most of the team was nearing retirement or counting the days. No one wanted to touch it. Too slow to scale, too old to shine. So I volunteered. They gave me a desk, no windows, no welcome. A password that hadn't been changed in 7 years. I spent the first 3 months listening, not fixing, not presenting, listening. Every spreadsheet was a graveyard of missed opportunities. Vendors hadn't been renegotiated in a decade. Shipping costs ballooned quarterly with no accountability. Internal tools were stitched together by techs long since gone. I rebuilt it, quietly. I started with the contracts. I audited every deal, every invoice, every outsourced error. I created a standard operating procedure from scratch, then a training manual, then a supplier rating model, then an AI-integrated routing system that cut waste by 40% in 8 months. They didn't notice because they weren't looking. The executive board had long ago written legacy integration off as nice to keep alive for branding. Valerie called it heritage optics. Melanie referred to it as the graveyard team. And I let them. Because while Melanie was posing with branded merchandise and planning TikToks about female leadership, I was consolidating a supply chain they couldn't even define. By the end of my first year, my department was the only one running at a profit. I submitted the reports. I watched them get skimmed, then discarded. Valerie never read past page 2. Melanie once marked up a printout with highlighter hearts around the word engagement. They thought I was a back-end tool. They didn't understand I was the architecture. So I kept building. I forged relationships with the auditors. I networked with the risk compliance team. I personally rewrote our procurement protocol after an environmental audit flagged inconsistencies, earning the company a $60,000 rebate and a sustainability certification they'd later credit to Melanie's department. I didn't correct them. I didn't need a headline. I needed leverage. And then I found it. During a quarterly reconciliation, I discovered a deferred ownership clause tied to a long-defunct logistics partner, Byrne Distribution. My grandfather had purchased their assets during a hostile acquisition in the early 2000s. Part of the deal included a rollover clause. If Byrne's stake ever fell below 5%, their outstanding shares reverted to the acquiring entity. The paperwork was buried in the archives, 4 scanned pages misfiled under inactive entities. Byrne's current stake? 4.87%. I had it reviewed, quietly, legally. It was airtight. Those shares, just under 6%, reverted immediately to the entity listed on the original merger contract. That entity? Ward Consolidated Systems. And I had controlling interest, 54.1%, majority voting power, Trigger Clause 9C. It was done. No screaming, no scene, just a calendar invite. Quarterly board review. All division leads present, Valerie included. Subject line, structural proposals and termination package reviews. I drafted the documents that night. 2 envelopes, identical cream cardstock, labeled in clean font, centered, Valerie Ward, Melanie Ward. The room would be neutral. I'd wear black. No jewelry. I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't smile. I'd just slide the envelopes across the table and remind them that paper cuts sting worse when you don't see them coming. Clause 9C was only 4 lines long. Buried deep in a charter amendment signed in 2003, it outlined a contingency for majority control in the event of silent shareholder dilution. No fanfare, no bold font, just legal precision. In the event that non-board capital acquisitions exceed 35% of the active shareholding pool, voting control shall transfer to the highest single shareholder. No asterisk, no override provision, no blood clause. I reviewed it again the night before the meeting. Twice. I wasn't checking for errors. I was savoring the symmetry. My father had signed it when I was 9. He hadn't read it then. Just another rubber-stamped clause to finalize the acquisition of a logistics firm no one remembered. The same acquisition that had given me the final 6% I needed. There was poetry in it. I arrived early to the boardroom. Black pantsuit, no jewelry, a single folder, 2 envelopes tucked inside. I laid them on the table, perfectly parallel, then took the seat my father used to occupy. It wasn't ceremonial. It was structural. The chair belonged to whoever held control. The room filled slowly. Legal counsel, operations lead, finance. A few legacy board members, one of whom had worked with my grandfather. They offered polite nods, averted eyes. Then Valerie entered, always poised, burgundy blazer, pearls. Her signature lipstick, the one she used for every press photo. She smiled at the room, then did a subtle double-take when she saw me seated at the head. "Good morning," she said, scanning the agenda on the projector. She sat down across from me. No greeting, no acknowledgement. Melanie followed 5 minutes later, in designer heels and an oversized beige coat. She sat beside her mother. No laptop, no notes, just her phone, which she placed screen down like she was doing the room a favor. I opened the meeting with no emotion. "Let's begin." The operations report was first, then finance, then a brief audit summary. Valerie looked bored. Melanie yawned once, discreetly but not discreetly enough. When it came time for structural changes, I clicked to the next slide. A single bullet point appeared. Change in majority shareholder status, effective March 1st. Valerie's head tilted. "What's this?" I didn't respond. I pulled out the folder and slid the 2 envelopes across the table. One to her, one to Melanie. I didn't push them hard. I didn't look theatrical. Just placed them like one places salt and pepper at dinner. She stared. "What is this?" Melanie reached for hers first, opened it, scanned, paused. "What is this?" she repeated, louder. "A separation agreement," I said calmly. "Termination. Effective immediately. Full severance per company policy. Benefits preserved for 60 days. Non-compete waiver included, though I doubt it'll be relevant." Valerie didn't open hers. She just looked at me, really looked. "You can't be serious. I'm documented. I'm ratified. My control was triggered by Clause 9C. I tapped the stack of supporting documents in front of me. Would you like the printout?" Her voice dropped half a note. "You think this makes you strong?" "No," I said. "It makes me majority." A ripple moved through the boardroom. No one intervened. No one objected. They knew. Or they'd seen it coming and hoped it would miss them. Valerie's lips parted. I saw her recalibrating, testing tones, angles, postures. She couldn't scream, not here, not with Melanie beside her and a table full of shareholders watching. So she folded the envelope shut. "You'll regret this," she said softly. I nodded once, then I stood. Meeting adjourned. No applause, no collapse. Just silence, the kind that echoes louder than any argument. It took less than 10 seconds for her expression to collapse. When I slid the envelope across the table, Valerie didn't reach for it right away. Her hand hovered. Elegant fingers manicured in a shade called executive blush. The same shade she wore the day she married my father. The same one in every framed photo in his home office. Control was her art form. But she didn't have control now. She had paper, and I had power. I watched her read it, line by line. Her lips tightened, then relaxed, then pulled tight again. Melanie's reaction was different. She opened hers like it was junk mail, smiling absently. But when she reached the second page, the smile stopped. "Wait, this is a joke, right?" No one answered. Valerie set the paper down, perfectly aligned with the edge of the table. "This is retaliation," she said. Her voice was low, composed, practiced. "It's business," I replied. "You can't just fire family." "You said I wasn't family." I said it flatly, no emphasis, no venom. But the silence that followed was sharp enough to slice through the air conditioning. Melanie's chair scraped against the floor as she leaned in. "I've worked here for almost 2 years. And you've cost us $418,000 in bad campaign placements," I interrupted. Her mouth opened, closed. "I let it go because it wasn't material. But this isn't a family bank. It's a company. And your liabilities." Across the table, a board member, Mr. Levy, 83, retired twice, cleared his throat. "She's not wrong," he said without looking up. Valerie didn't blink. She just narrowed her eyes and said, You always needed to prove something, Celine. I tilted my head. Number I needed to own something. A moment passed, then another, and then she asked the only question she truly cared about. Did your father know? No, I said. He was already too far gone to understand the numbers. You waited for him to decline. I waited for everyone to assume I wouldn't matter. She closed the envelope, picked up her pen, and for the first time in years, Valerie looked small, not humiliated, not broken, just reduced. Melanie pushed her chair back. This is disgusting, she said. I have half a mind to post about it. Feel free. I've already locked the press release. Melanie looked at her mother, expecting a cue. None came. Valerie just said, You don't need to humiliate us. I stood up, smoothed my jacket. I didn't come here to humiliate you. I came to reclaim what you said I didn't belong to. She nodded once. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Do you feel better now? I paused, not out of emotion, out of calculation. I feel efficient. Then I turned and left the room, let the silence finish the sentence, let the legacy rewire itself, let the paper do what voices couldn't. She caught me in the hallway. The meeting was over. The papers had been signed, security badges were already being deactivated, their emails frozen, office access revoked. I was halfway down the marble corridor that led from the executive boardroom to the elevators when I heard her voice, steady, low, too controlled to be casual. Celine. I turned. Valerie stood under the recessed light, envelope still in hand, coat folded over one arm like she hadn't decided whether to put it on or throw it away. Her expression was blank. Not furious, not embarrassed, just unreadable. I need to ask, she said, did any of this mean something to you? I held her gaze. What do you mean? All these years, sitting at that table, watching us, planning this. Did it feel good? She took a half step closer. Did it feel like justice? I let the pause hang between us. I didn't do it to feel good, I said. I did it because it was necessary. She exhaled like that offended her. I raised you. No, I said, voice flat. You tolerated me. I fed you, housed you, because you married my father, not because you chose me. She looked away, jaw locked. A second passed, then two. You think you've won. This isn't a game. Then what is it? She asked, stepping into the space between us. Some twisted performance of self-worth? Revenge for not being pampered like your sister? I didn't flinch. I didn't reply. She waited, and when it became clear I wouldn't entertain the argument, she leaned in. You'll be alone, Celine. I already was, I said. Her eyes flickered. There it was, hurt, or something close to it. Melanie's not built to survive without this, she said. She doesn't know how to live without someone protecting her. Then maybe she'll learn. And what about you? I looked her in the eye. I already did. I didn't wait for her to speak again. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, stepped in without turning around. As the doors closed, I saw her one last time, still standing under that soft ceiling light, envelope in hand, the woman who'd spent her entire life controlling every room, now powerless in the one room that mattered most. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just left. Because justice doesn't need applause, it needs closure, and sometimes the cleanest form of revenge isn't loud or dramatic, it's professional, it's the signature on a termination letter, it's the silence after the ink dries, it's the daughter you erased, signing your exit.